Welcome to the Barry and Jeff Show. Is it worth it to get your own oil change done, to do it yourself, or to take it into one of those quick lube places like Valvoline, Jiffy Lube, 5 Minute Lube? I've done both.
I've done both.
I've recently done it myself, and I was really questioning whether or not it's something I should do, right, because there's a lot of advantages going into a shop and just having them do it. What I'm not really certain of what the cost would be to do it myself versus taking it to a quick lube place.
Not only the cost, too, the time. Because something you don't think about is when you're doing it yourself, you got to go buy the oil and the oil filter wherever you go. You go to Walmart, you go to the parts store, you're going to spend 30, 45 minutes going and getting the stuff to do it. Then you got to keep up with your drain pan. Then after you change your oil, assuming you don't make any mistakes, because the average person is not a mechanic, then you got to gather up all your stuff. You got to bottle the old oil back up, and then you got to take it and recycle it. Even if you're experienced, all said and done, you got an hour and a half, 2 hours labor in it.
So the time is a cost, not
right,
just the materials.
Especially when you can pull into Walmart or pull into one of these quickie oil changes, and they'll do it in 10 minutes, and you're on your way.
Let's kind of break it down a little bit. So I have cars that I do both conventional oil and synthetic oil. Mm-hmm. And I know that's a debate that we can get into as well. Take the synthetic oil first. My wife's car is a 2018 Highlander. We put synthetic oil in that one. Mm-hmm. We've been taking it to Valvoline in some oil change place, depending on what we get done. But if it's just the oil itself, it's almost $100. Mm-hmm. So it's the oil, the filter, and of course they do other things too. They'll fill your washer fluid, check your air pressure and all that stuff. When I was looking at the cost of synthetic oil, it's still expensive to buy it at the store.
It is. I think even I think the basic generic synthetic oil is, it's not too bad. I guess a basic synthetic oil in the 5-quart jug is, you buy it at Walmart, is roughly going to be $20, $21 for 5 quarts. I don't know where you've been having it done, but I called Walmart for a basic synthetic oil change, and I'm assuming they're just using a cheap Fram filter.
Yeah.
And apparently, I didn't know it was a thing, but there's synthetic oil filters and conventional oil filters. I never knew that until looking at prices for this show. But, so a synthetic oil filter is $10 or $11, roughly. And 5 quart of synthetic oil is roughly $21. But a synthetic oil change at Walmart for a basic synthetic oil change is $45.
Wow, that's a lot cheaper than I've been paying. I've been going to the wrong place.
Apparently. There's definitely variations in that of, like, my van holds 6 quarts.
Yeah.
Well, if I go change the oil for that extra 6th quart, they charged me, the last time I went, I think they charged me like $17 or $18 for 1 quart of oil.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was at the one over here on 153, one of the chain oil places. I don't know what it is, but I do change the oil in my van myself, and that's the only reason, is because I felt like it was a ripoff for that extra quart of oil above the average, I guess.
That is a lot.
So
you could do your own synthetic oil change. You said about $25 for 5 quarts if you have a car that takes 5 quarts.
Actually, about 21.
21?
Right.
That's actually a lot better than I thought it was going to be. And then you said for the filter it was going to be how much?
Well, if it is true that there is legitimate differences between oil filters that you would use, conventional oil or synthetic, so a synthetic Fram oil filter is $11. So I think the basic conventional oil change for the average person is all they need.
All right. So is synthetic oil worth the money? And does it last longer? I guess that's the big question.
I don't know if it lasts longer or not, but I don't know what is longer. Most cars nowadays, oil change intervals is 10,000 miles.
Synthetic or for conventional?
I don't know if it's synthetic or conventional or not. I can tell you what I personally do. So my van, the van I have now, and the van I had before that I drive a lot, almost coast to coast every year, So the van I had before, I sold it with 290,000 miles on it. It was a V6 Chevrolet, a 4.3 V6 Chevrolet. I changed the oil in it every 10,000 miles with whatever conventional oil that was on sale, the cheapest one on the shelf. And the only thing I'll say is I don't like aftermarket oil filters personally. I think virtually all aftermarket oil filters for the average application is junk. I like factory OEM oil filters. So for me, what I always do is I change the oil with the cheapest oil that's on sale, whatever it is, and an OEM oil filter. So with that one, it was a Chevrolet. I used the AC Delco oil filter. I bought that van with less than 100,000 miles on it. I sold it with almost 300,000, and I would change the oil about every 10,000 miles with the cheapest oil and an AC Delco oil filter. With the van I got now, I bought it with 60,000 miles. It's a Ford. I put the cheapest oil I can get my hands on with a Motorcraft oil filter, and it's got 210,000 on it now, and I change it every 10,000 miles, roughly.
Huh. So even with synthetic, I change ours about every 8 to 10,000 miles too. So that's what they say is 7 to 10,000 miles. I've been using synthetic oil. It's the Valvoline Duramax or Duralife or something like that. Valvoline, yeah. And I've been using that in my Camry for ever since I got it in 2014. It's got, I think, 160,000 miles on it now. Toyotas are made pretty good anyway. It's not like you'd expect them to break down.
But I think all the manufacturers are that way. I mean, it's not like it was in the 80s and 90s. I mean, they've been perfecting cars for well over 100 years. You know, all the manufacturers are pretty good at it now, in my opinion.
So my first car was a 1977 Chevy Monte Carlo. It was a cool car. I liked it a lot. I think the recommended interval on that one was 3,500 miles with conventional oil.
Right.
So, yeah, they don't make cars back then like they do now. I mean, everything fits tighter. They use better materials, better engineering.
The oil's better now than it was then. Even the conventional oil is leaps and bounds better than it was in the 80s and 90s.
So getting back to doing it yourself, the process is obviously you have to have a space to do it. You've got to have something to drain your oil into. You
Basic tools and a drain pan and you know, and then if you're going to do it correctly, then you got the responsibility of getting rid of your oil filter and your oil in a good way.
How do you do that? Where do you take your...
Well, for here, we got recycling centers that we can take it to. You've got to bottle it back up. You drain it in your pan, you got to bottle it back up, then you got to go to the recycling center, or I think most parts stores will take it to.
What can go wrong if you try to do it yourself?
Well, I mean, obviously a whole bunch of stuff. You know, you can not put enough oil in it. You get too far off on the viscosity, you know, the difference in the oil, your different weights. You know, you get too far off, then you can do some damage to the motor. You don't get your O-ring, your old O-ring off of the oil filter. I haven't had that happen in many years, but earlier the ring on the oil filters would stick to the block sometimes, so you had to make sure that. Over the years, I've had a couple of customers come in with that problem where it pouring oil. So I don't think there's major room for error, but there is room for error. You know, especially when you're not used to it, and if you just have a basic knowledge, there's still room for error. So, in my opinion, personal opinion, it'll be very controversial to. I'm sure people will write in and tell me how stupid I am, but I think for the average person in the average car, just driving to work and to the grocery store and taking their kids to school, I don't think you need expensive oil. I don't think you need synthetic oil. I don't think you need none of that stuff.
So here's another myth that I've heard is once you go with synthetic, you can't go back to conventional. Is that true?
I can't give you any exact data on it, but I can tell you I've done it hundreds of times.
Back and forth?
Yeah. And I've mixed them. I'm sure I'll get some crap off of that, but if I bought a car to fix and sell and it's low on oil, I'm going to put the right weight in it of whatever I have. I've never had problem. I've done the same thing on my own cars that I've kept. you know.
For the viewers out there that have an opinion, we'd love to hear your opinion on it. If you know of facts around whether or not you can switch from conventional to synthetic and back again, love to hear your comments.
I would too.
And see what your thoughts on that are, your experience, if you've been doing your own oil changes, you know, what's the upside, downside. The other thing about going into a quick lube place is a lot of times they're going to try to sell you on other things, right? Like the cabin air filter is always something that they're going to want to switch out. And for some cars, it's harder to switch out the cabin air filter than others. Some of them are super easy.
And I assume the reason they do that is simply because there's not a lot of money made off changing oil. Because there's not a lot of price difference between having them do it versus you doing it yourself. And when it comes to, for Walmart, for instance, a conventional oil change, if you're willing to use like a Fram oil filter, you do it yourself, I come up with $25.48. For them doing it, $24.88. So it's a few cents cheaper to have them do it on a basic conventional oil change than it is you doing it yourself. So the only thing I can figure is they price it low to get you in there and then upsell cabin oil filters and try to convince you that a conventional oil is bad and you need to go to synthetic and that kind of stuff.
A lot of times I go in and they'll say, hey, your transmission needs to be flushed out. Don't get your transmission flushed out. Drain it and refill it if you need to, but don't do the I don't know what they put into it. If it's like a kerosene type product and they pump it through it and try to wash everything out.
I mean, I can give my opinion, but my opinion would just be based on my opinion. It wouldn't be based on really any fact. I've never had one flushed. I do believe in changing it.
Just draining it out and putting
just draining it and put a filter on it and putting it back in. If you can drain the torque converter, but I think most cars nowadays you can't even drain the torque converter.
But like most people probably wouldn't want
They wouldn't know how to do it anyway, and it gets a lot more in depth. My Ford van, I actually ended up taking it back to the dealer and having the transmission done. And I did Lori's car the same way. She's got the new Hyundai. And the main reason is just for warranty. You know, I could do it myself, but the transmission's a little different than a motor. You know, I think there's a substantial price difference.
Will it void out your warranty if you do it yourself?
I don't know.
No,
I just wasn't willing to take the chance.
Yeah.
You know, because I think like my van, I've read that a lot of people have transmission problems on my van. So that's the reason I did it with it. But as far as oil changes, if you want to change your own oil, great, do it. I don't think it's worth it, personally.
So you think it's worth it just to take it and get it done? It's
not
that much more expensive.
Once you figure in money and time, I think, you know, like I say, to go get the oil, come back, change your oil, get rid of your old oil, you got 2 or 3 hours in it.
Yeah.
You go have your oil changed. You know, the one time I took my van through, I didn't even have to get out of the van. They were done in less than 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So what's that 3 hours time worth? I can do a lot of fun stuff in 3 hours.
That's true.
That's not laying under my van changing the oil.
And you're probably going to get dirty.
Right. You know, so I personally don't think it's worth it. You have to be able to say no to all the extra stuff. If you don't say no to all the extra stuff, then you've got a $200 or $300 oil change.
Yeah, that's why my wife doesn't like taking the car in, because she feels like they're going to try to sell her on everything, and because she's a woman, they're going to be able to get more sales.
Right.
Where when I go in, I know what I'm talking about and say, no, I'll do that one myself. I can change my own air filter, my cabin air filter. I can replace my own washer blades. You know, the things that they'll upcharge you for. Things that they will include, they're going to make sure your tires are full. They're going to make sure that your washer fluid's full. I mean,
but something else you got to think about too, you know, and it'd be good for people to know how to change their own oil, to check their own oil, to check their tire pressure, to do all of that stuff. But most modern cars do it all for you now. I mean, Lori's car tells me how much air pressure is in each tire. It tells me if not only is it time to change the oil, is the oil low. I mean, and I'll probably get some crap off of viewers off of this too, but I don't even check my oil in between oil changes. Your car does it for you. And I mean, when was the last time unless you've got something like your old truck or my old hippie van. When was the last time you checked the oil in your car and it was actually low? And I have, and again, in my van, I changed my own oil in my van for that only reason is because they always kind of stick it to me on that extra quart.
Yeah.
But it's never been low. I've put 150, 60,000 miles on it. It's never been low. The van before it was the same way. I go 10,000 miles, and even at almost 300,000 miles, it was never low between changes. And if it was low, the van's going to tell me it was low.
So, oil brands. Any particular point of view?
Again, for me, I usually will buy Walmart brand. What is it? Super.
I don't know.
Super something. That's what I buy.
Okay.
I
There
buy
are some people that are diehard Pennzoil,
Yeah, there
diehard
is,
Mobil,
yeah.
diehard Valvoline.
And I think in certain circumstances, it's true. You know, I think in transmission fluid, I believe a little more in that. But oil, for the average person, again, if you're racing, if you're hauling a lot of weight, if you're abusing it in some way, maybe there's a difference of oil. Maybe. I still question it, but maybe. For the average person, I just don't buy it. And that's based off of my personal experience. I don't buy it.
All right. So, bottom line, it's worth it to take your car in to get the oil change done yourself. Some of the other things that they do at the oil change place, you can do yourself. They're pretty simple.
Yeah, that's kind of up to you. If you makes you feel better to put new cabin filters and stuff in it, do it.
All right. Love to hear your perspectives, your point of view. If you're really diehard one way or the other, doing it yourself, getting somebody else to do it, what's your perspective on what kind of oil you should use for newer cars versus older cars? And then brands. So I know that in one of our other videos, we had one guy who was just totally diehard Valvoline,
Right.
and another guy on that same thread commented, no, absolutely wouldn't go with Valvoline. So there's a lot of different perspectives out there. And
Same thing with oil filters, too. I'm curious how other people feel about oil filters. The only thing I'm really strong about is oil filters. I think manufacturers make really good oil filters. And I prefer factory oil filters. I very, 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 very seldom will ever use anything but a factory AC Delco or whatever it is I'm working on. Lori's car, the Hyundai dealer made me mad, so I did change the oil the last time. But I ordered Hyundai oil filters for it.
you just get them on Amazon?
Yeah,
All right.
yeah. So,
All right. Well, there you have it. That's the debate. Love to hear your comments. If you have a point of view, put them in the comments. Let us know what you think. And if you find this discussion to be helpful and you want to see more content like this, please hit like and subscribe. That'll help us bring more of this type of content to the channel. Thank you all. Until next time, have a good one.